The Dataverse coding agents are great, but I do a lot of my day-to-day work in Azure DevOps on my projects, and I'd love to find a way to not have to rekey everything that I've written out in ADO into GitHub Copilot when it's time to go and do the work. In this demo, I'm going to give you the cheat code so that you only have to do the work once. Do it in ADO, and then GitHub Copilot can take over from there. Let's get into it. All right, we are in the GitHub Copilot CLI here in VS Code. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to connect to Azure DevOps. There is an MCP server for that. And all I would do is simply in the command line interface here, just tell it that you want to connect to the Azure DevOps MCP server, and it will take you through all of the steps. Now, as a quick aside, one of the cheat codes to make this easier is in Azure DevOps, you're going to want to click here on user settings, and you are going to want to generate a personal access token. That's going to make it much easier to connect in the CLI. All right. So what I've done is I have actually cheated a little bit, and I've had GitHub Copilot generate some user stories for me in ADO. It's done that via the MCP server, super, super handy. And so let's come over here to my work items. And these are the items that it's created. And so what we're going to do is we are going to build some custom tables. We're going to build some cloud flows in the Power Platform using the Dataverse coding agents. But simulating what we do in most projects, we've actually created these here in ADO. So we've got the user story as a this, I want to that, so that, acceptance criteria, and the things for it to build. So it's got some details here to go and build these artifacts in the Power Platform, Dataverse tables, cloud flows, all of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a prompt into GitHub Copilot and say, hey, I want you to look at these items and I want you to work on them. Now, in the items, it has put some dependencies in here for me. So it let it know this is what you need to work on first. If you didn't do that, then you could get some interesting results. But let's go ahead and work on this and see what happens. Now, this is my first time doing multiple items. I've had it successfully look at one item and build it, but let's kick it up a notch and let's use these 5 user stories. It actually created them as issues, but let's pretend they're user stories and see how we get on. So we're going to come here to the coding agent and I'm going to put in the following prompt. We're going to say, find all the ADO items with the coding agent demo tag and use the Dataverse coding agents to create these items in Dataverse Power Platform. Create all items in a solution. We'll say create a new solution called ADO YouTube demo using the Nathan Rose publisher with the NDR prefix. All right, so we're giving it pretty high level instructions because all of the detail is here in ADO in our user stories. So we're really just saying, look at these, and then based on the content of these, go and build them. So let's just make sure we got everything here we need. Create these items. Let's do this. Let's say based on the content of the ADO items. Give it a little bit more clarity there. Okay, cool. So let's flick it into plan mode, and let's see what it comes up with, and then we will get on to the build. So let's execute that. All right, so it found the 5 items. It's now checking the Dataverse environment. It's looking for my publisher and looking for automation patterns. All right, it's now creating a dedicated project folder for this solution, and it's going to confirm whether it has all the plugins it needs and if it has any scripts it can reuse. Very nice. Okay, now it needs me to confirm a few things, some judgment calls before it finalizes the plan. All right, after each artifact is built, should I also update the corresponding ADO work item state and add a comment linking what was created and leave the ADO items untouched? Really good question. I didn't tell it what to do. And when we are working in ADO as consultants, we update it so that everybody knows that I'm working on it, that I'm finished, etc. So let's now this is an interesting one because it's going to update it. Do we actually want it to make an to say that it's active? Let's do this. Let's come down here and let's say um, yes. When you start working on an ADO item, change the status to active. Then once completed, change the status to, let's see what the status actually is. So we give it the right to doing and done. Got it. Let's update that. So to doing, then once complete, change the status to done and add a comment. Let's do that. All right. Okay, so it has come up with the plan. It is going to use the specialized Dataverse skills. It's going to create the solution. It's going to use my Nathan Rose publisher. It's going to go through this with each ADO item. So it's going to mark it as doing when it's working on it, then flick it to done and add a comment. The sequencing, it's worked out the sequencing based on the ADO items. It has flagged a risk. The trigger for story 20 is less proven than the raw workflow table technique. We'll attempt it, fallback options. Cool. Full detail in the plan. Let's go ahead and accept this and build it on Autopilot. So here we go. All right, it's creating the solution. And let's see if it has started marking these as to do. Not yet. So it's still in to do state. Okay, now it's moved on to story 18. So let's take a look and see. Let's do a quick refresh. Story 18. Still says to do. Doing. Nice. Okay, so it's updated the status, and we'll see what happens as soon as it's completed. In the meantime, let's go into our environment and let's just check to see if the solution is there. Do a quick refresh. And here is our solution. Very, very cool. So it's created the solution as expected. And probably still waiting for items to drop into this. Yeah, so it's still working on creating the table. All right, it has created the table and the 6 columns successfully. So it's just verifying logical names, and then it's going to update our ADO item. So we'll give it a second to do that. And it's confirmed everything, and it's just updating our ADO item and giving us a summary. So while it's doing that, let's come over here to our solution, and let's just take a quick look. Just do a quick refresh. And don't see it just yet. Interesting. But it has updated our ADO item to done. Let's see if it dropped a comment like we asked it to. It did. So it's built it in this environment within the solution, created these tables and these columns. Pretty good detailed note. Let's just do another quick refresh. Sometimes it takes a second or two for these to show up. Let me do a Control F5. Okay, let's give it a second and see what's going on. Okay, so I came here to the custom tables. It has created the equipment table with my solution prefix. It looks like it just hasn't added it to the solution yet. So it might be doing that as the final step in the process. We'll let it run and see, but it's not. So the table exists in our environment with the correct prefix. It's not in our solution just yet. So we'll let it keep running and see how we go. All right, so we're rapidly making progress here. We can see that 2 of the 5 items have dropped off of the board here as the agent continues to work through things. If I come here to my query, I can see that 2 of them are done, 3 are waiting. Let's come back here to see how we're doing. So it's still looking through. Can't find Power Automate in the allowed skill list, so it's working through that. But we should see it get back to work very shortly once it works that out. So we'll see how we go. All right, this is very cool. Let's validate these flows actually fire before marking the story done. Creating temporary test records. Love it. Very good practice. Get this, I need to clean up a stray equipment record from a failed test run before retrying. Really, really cool stuff. This is the kind of stuff that trips us up and often takes hours when building and testing and validating cloud flows and other parts of the project. And the coding agents are doing this in seconds. Just checking in on the ADO board. 3 are done. 1 is in progress. 1 more to go. Not bad for 20 minutes of work. All right, so it's validated both flows correctly. They're doing exactly what they need. So it's testing as it goes. So it's doing that unit testing inside of the ADO ticket. This is really good practice. Now, I used to think we could create an agent and call it junior functional consultant. This is more like an intermediate. These agents are following better practice than sometimes I even do when working in ADO and building in Power Platform. This is really, really impressive. And it's checking in on the run history of the flow just to make sure that it is truly confident. I've got a 403 app registration. So it's determined the 403 shouldn't be an issue. And moving on to the last item. Now it's building my model-driven app. So we should have something to test very shortly. Let's take a quick look at the ADO board. So we're on to the last item. Let's come over here to our solution. Let's see if it's added things to the solution yet, or if it's going to do that at the end. It hasn't, so it looks like it's going to do that at the end. So let's let it play and see how we go. All right, so it's created the views. Now it's adding these views to the solution, and we'll create the app module. So let's let it do that. And when I look here in my solution, I can see that I've got tables, I've got cloud flows. So I'm just waiting for the model-driven app. Now, when I have done this before, we did have some issues. So we'll see if if the app makes it to the solution or not. It's creating an icon. Really nice. All right, so we've hit a programmatic approach in terms of the app designer. So it looks like that's something we're going to have to do manually, but it's going to leave us a note about that on the ADO ticket. So just let this finish running. Actually, let's go to the ADO item and take a look. So we go here to our last item. Let's open it up. So doing, and it's added a note. Remaining step. Dataverse does not support adding tables and sitemap entries to an app model via the SDK. So it's going to have to be done manually. Okay. But it's given us nice detailed instructions about what it's done and what it hasn't been able to finish. So it's writing our outcome documentation, summarizing everything built. This is incredible. It's doing its final checks. It's created an outcome file doing final checks. All right, now it's found some issues. It needs to add the contact, checking why only 2 of 3 views show as solution components. There's a missing view, so it's adding it in. So this is really impressive stuff. It's doing some really good QA work here on the things that it's building, ensuring that it's followed all the instructions and getting me everything that I need in my solution. All right, so the agent has finished running. Everything is now in this YouTube demo solution. It's resolved the missing view concern, wasn't actually an issue. So the manual step is just creating the model-driven app, which I'm doing right now. It's built all of these, marked them as done, investigated and resolved a false alarm, and fully documented in the outcome markdown file. Very, very cool. So if we come back here, so I've just published my app. Let's go ahead and play that. And if I come over here to ADO, let's just rerun the query. Everything is done with the exception of the app, which I've gone and created. So let's go ahead and mark that done as well. And we'll add a note, app created manually by NDR, and go ahead and save that. Sweet. So we have got this done in, call it under an hour. So if we come here now to equipment loans, contacts, so we've got everything that we need. Let's ask it to run some tests. So let's come over here now and let's say I've created the model-driven app. Can you add test data and run tests in the app, triggering flows? Do not delete any of the test rows created. And we'll just go ahead and pop that onto YOLO mode and get it to go ahead and do this. Now, another way that we could test this is I do have the Playwright MCP server connected, and so it could pop a browser window and do that for us as well, but we'll just do this at the API level for now. All right, so it's going ahead and creating some test data for us. Let's come over here to our app and let's see if it's, so we've got some test equipment, and I'm assuming the loans will be created by the flows perhaps. Interesting. Now, one thing I didn't tell it to do was add all the fields to the form. So if we come here and let's just use level up real quick and let's say all fields. So there's actually purchase dates, name, things like that, that we kind of would like to know, but they're not on the form. And so that's something that I missed in my instructions to the agent. Now, if you tell it to do that, it will do it. But in this case, it didn't. So that's kind of an interesting call out there. So it's going and creating, just fixing its script. So we'll give it a second and see how we go. Okay, so all the flows have triggered correctly. It's triggering the return flow. Let's come over here and just take a look at our test data. So again, so it's added some equipment. It's added some loans. Very nice. Interesting. It chose all current and former prime ministers of New Zealand as recipients of the equipment loans. Interesting choice there from the coding agent. So it looks like it didn't create any new contacts. It just used existing ones. But interesting choice, choosing current and former New Zealand prime ministers. Let's come back here and see. So it is just monitoring the return flow. All right. While it's testing, let's just take a quick look at the cloud flows. So let's see which ones have run and which ones haven't. So the flag overdue has worked. The set equipment available on return had some successful tests. Very nice. And set equipment on loan has also worked. Now I saw something interesting in this first flow, flag overdue equipment loans, running on a recurrence, it looks like. Let's dig into the details here and take a look, because I saw something about trying to trigger it and having some issues. So let's yeah, it's running on a recurrence, running daily. That's an interesting choice. Now, I can see why it would do that, because it's looking for loans that are overdue. I'm not wild about the idea of the polling running every day, because we're then kind of looking at, do we, potentially running it unnecessarily. The other thing is we don't have a check step in here to say, did we actually find anything, yes or no? So we're going to get some false positives. So there's some changes that I would make to this flow. And these are some things that I can tell it when it's finished and say, hey, based on this flow, here's update your skills, and here's how I would prefer this to be built. But it's updating the outcome doc. It looks like we are just about done here. All right, so the coding agent's wrapping things up here. It is finalizing everything, but we've got everything we want here in the solution. So we have literally gone from 5 ADO tickets to solution components in a solution in Dataverse. We've got tables, we've got columns, we've got views, we've got cloud flows. This has all been unit tested, and our ADO board has been updated with comments along the way from the Dataverse coding agents in GitHub Copilot, combined with the ADO MCP server. And there we go. We're done. We've got our final report out. So that is very, very cool. In under an hour, I have gone from ADO tickets to working solution in the Power Platform. And of course, with these agents, as we've seen before, I could package it and ship it to another environment as well. So that's how I combined the ADO, Azure DevOps MCP server, with the Dataverse coding agents in GitHub Copilot to create magic on the Power Platform. All right, that's it from me. Go do something awesome on the Power Platform today, and I'll talk to you soon.